Class, our topic for today is accounting for leases. This topic is one of the most challenging topics for students. That's why I need 100% of your attention. Alright? Now, standards na gagamitin natin for accounting for leases is IFRS 16. To understand leases, I'll give you an illustration. For example, si Mr. X, plan niya magtayo ng isang school. Alright? And kailangan ni Mr. X ng 3-story building with floor area of 1,000 square meters. Yan. Now, si Mr. X, because limited yung budget niya, mas prefer niya na mag-rent instead of purchase. Because sa rent, magbabayad siya ng basically monthly. Pero kapag purchase, kailangan one-time payment yan. Since limited yung budget niya, mas prefer niya na mag-rent muna in the meantime. Now, here is Mr. Y. Mr. Y owns a 3-story building. And Mr. X and Mr. Y entered into a contract of lease. In a contract of lease, there are two parties. Si Mr. X, ang tawag natin sa kanya, siya yung lessee. And si Mr. Y, siya naman yung lessor. Actually, yung lessee class, siya yung tenant. While the lessor is the landlord. Okay? So, in a contract of lease, si lessor, Mr. Y, bibigyan niya si lessee, Mr. X, ng right to use the asset. Okay, let's say for 10 years. So, ibig sabihin, si Mr. X, pwede niyang gamitin yung building. Let's say, ang plano niya yung 3rd floor gagawin niyang classroom. 2nd floor is also a classroom. And then, 1st floor, let's say, yung isang portion, canteen. And the other portion is library. Alright? So, in exchange, dun sa right to use the building, si Mr. X magbabayad kay Mr. Y. Let's say, yung napag-agreehan nila is 100 pesos per square meter per month. Since 1,000 square meters yan, times 100, 100,000 per month yung bayad ni lessee to the lessor. This is an example of a contract of lease. Again, in a contract of lease, we have the lessee and the lessor. Si lessor, binibigyan niya si lessee na right to use the asset. In exchange, si lessee naman, babayaran niya si lessor. Alright? And IFRS 16 defines the lease. Okay? Sabi dun, a lease is a contract. So we know, yung contract na yan is between the lessee and lessor. So pag nagbasa ka ng isang contract of lease, actually, marami nakalagay dun. Pero yung pinaka main points nun is, number 1 is the rental rate. Dapat nakalagay yun sa contract of lease. So in our illustration, it's 100 pesos per square meter per month. Alright? And ang typical din na makikita mo in a contract of lease, since a lease is a long term, in this case 10 years, makikita mo din class yung escalation clause. Okay? Because 100 per square meter, nag-a-apply yan this year. Okay? Since every year nagkakaroon ng inflation, tumataas din yung rental rate mo every year. So let's say this is 5%. Ibig sabihin, year 1 is 100 pesos per square meter. Sa year 2, magiging 105 pesos per square meter na siya. Alright? And also, in a contract of lease, you will see there yung lease term. So, how long pwedeng i-occupy ni lessee yung building. So, in our illustration, it's 10 years. Alright? Ano pa? In a contract of lease, makikita ka rin doon kung how much yung nire-require ni lessor na security deposit. So basically, yung security deposit, from the word itself, security, pag nagkaroon ng damage yung building, pag pinagawa iyon, ibabawas ni lessor sa security deposit yung bayad para dun sa damages. And pag may natira sa security deposit, ibabalik ni lessor yun kay lessee at the end of lease term. Alright? Now, a lease is a contract that conveys the right to use the asset. Okay, so alam natin yung may right to use na kay lessee na. Tama? Yung asset in our illustration is the 3-story building. For a period of time, in our illustration, it's 10 years in exchange for a consideration. In our illustration, it's 100 pesos per square meter. So, yun yung definition of lease under IFRS 16. Is a contract that conveys the right to use the asset for a period of time in exchange for a consideration. Now, as we know, may dalawang point of view dito. Point of view of the lessee and point of view of the lessor. Ihiwalay natin yung discussion na yan. Okay? But for now, let's start with the lessee. Alright. Sir, paano yung accounting kapag point of view ni lessee? Okay. So, let's say ito yung timeline natin. This is January 1, 2023. And then, this is December 31, 2023. So, in accounting, alam natin class, kapag sa start of the contract, ang tawag natin doon is initial measurement. End of the year, ang tawag natin dito is subsequent measurement. Right? Let's say January 1, 2023, dyan nagpirmahan ng contract of lease si lessee and si lessor. Tawag natin dito class, this is the commencement date. Okay? According to IFRS 16, this is the general rule for the lessees. The general rule is, tanda mo to class, all leases shall be classified as a finance lease. Okay? At the commencement date, start of the lease, dyan nagpirmahan si lessee at lessor. The general rule is, from the point of view of the lessee, all leases shall be classified as a finance lease. Sir, ano ibig sabihin ng finance lease? Okay, ibig sabihin ng finance lease class, ang implication yan is, in the books of the lessee, mag-record siya ng January 1, 2023, debit right of use asset, or ROUA, let's call it ROA. Debit right of use asset, credit lease liability. Let's call this LL. Alright? So, under a finance lease, si lessee meron siyang debit right of use asset and meron siyang credit lease liability. So, kaya nilagay ko dito class na general rule is because there are exceptions. Okay? If the lease is short-term, ibig sabihin ng short-term in accounting, it's less than 1 year, or if the lease is of low value, okay, ang i-apply natin dito class, okay, is the operating lease model. So, magsasagot tayo niyan sa exercises natin, yung operating lease. But, all leases, general rule natin, shall be classified as a finance lease. Okay, ito lang yung mga rare instances wherein you can use operating lease. But everything else, finance lease. Again, pag sinabing finance lease, meron kang debit asset, meron kang credit liability. Okay, so from this journal entry, ang important dyan class is how to measure or how to compute for right of use asset and lease liability. Pag nalaman natin yan, then madali na sa atin yung accounting sa point of view of the lessee. Mag-start muna tayo with lease liability. Explain ko later kung bakit ito yung unahin ko instead of right of use asset. Okay, let's discuss lease liability. Okay, basically class, yung lease liability is just the present value of lease payments. Okay, underline ko yung important, lease payments. Yung pag sabi mo lease payments, these are payments from the lessee to the lessor. Okay, very important yung lessee to the lessor. Mamaya, explain ko why. Okay, basically, yung lease liability is just the present value of lease payments. So, dapat malaman natin ano yung magiging part of the lease payments. Number one is the fixed rentals. In our illustration earlier, yung fixed rentals dito is 100 pesos per square meter per month. Right? Okay. Next is variable rentals. Sir, meron palang variable rentals? Yes, actually common siya class sa mga malls. Okay? Pag pumunta ka sa, let's say, sa SM, marami kang makikitang kiosks doon or stalls. Tama? So, yung mga yun class, usually ang kontrata nila with SM, magbabayad sila ng monthly rent kay SM plus variable rent. And usually, yung variable rent na yan is percentage of sales. Okay? So, common yan ha. So, meron kang fixed rentals, meron kang variable rentals. Okay? So, part siya ng lease payments. Ano ba class yung part ng lease payments? Purchase option. Okay? So, ano yung purchase option? In a purchase option, the lessee, okay, has the right to purchase, to buy the leased asset. Okay? So, in our illustration, if nasa contract of lease na nakalagay doon, okay, Mr. X, pwede mong bilhin yung building anytime. Okay? For, let's say, 10 million pesos. Kapag ganun class, ang tawag doon is purchase option. And a purchase option is part of the lease payments. Okay, again, yung ini-enumerate ko na to, parts of lease payments. Bakit natin, sir, kailangan yung lease payments? Because we want to know how much is the lease liability. So, ibig sabihin class, kapag may purchase option and reasonably certain, okay, na i-exercise siya ni lessee, right? Ibig sabihin class, yung leased asset, okay, will go to the lessee. Tama lang? So, pag binili ni lessee yan, sa kanya na yung asset. Does that make sense? Alright. So, that's purchase option. Number 4 is what we call guaranteed residual value or GRV. From the term itself, guaranteed. Ibig sabihin class, ito yung assured residual value. Okay? At the end of lease term. Okay? So, in our illustration, let's say, yung sabi sa contract of lease. Alright. So, ginaguarantee ni Mr. X, ni lessee, na okay, yung value ng building, sa end of 10 years, i-guarantee ko yan, 5 million pesos yan. Alright? So, ang tawag doon class is guaranteed residual value. If, let's say, 5 million, di ba? Let's say, 4 million lang yung naging value at the end. Yung 1 million na kulang, babayaran ni lessee yun kay lessor. So basically, when you say guaranteed residual value, ina-assure ni lessee na ito yung amount of the asset, in our case is the building, at the end of lease term. So in that case class, since ina-assure mo sa lessor, ibig sabihin, the leased asset reverts back to the lessor. Tama lang? Babalik sa kanya sa end of useful life. Now, if you compare that sa purchase option, in a purchase option, mapupunta kay lessee yung property, yung leased asset. Pag may guaranteed residual value naman, mapupunta kay lessor yung leased asset. Therefore, yung purchase option and guaranteed residual value cannot exist at the same time. Does that make sense? It's either may purchase option or may guaranteed residual value. Hindi pwedeng makita mo sa contract na, okay, may purchase option and guaranteed residual. It's always or. Alright? Hindi sila pwede mag-exist at the same time because under purchase option, the leased asset will go to the lessee, while pag may GRV naman, the leased asset will go back to the lessor. Got it? Okay. Now, yung last part of the lease payment is if there are penalties. Okay? If pre-terminated yung contract. So, for example, class, naging usapan nila is 10 years. Tama? Ngayon, after 6 years, sabi ni Mr. X, ay, hindi ko na i-continue yung lease contract natin. Okay? So, hindi pa tapos yung lease contract. So, in that case, possible na magbayad si Mr. X ng penalties. Pag ganun class, yung penalties mag-form part siya of the lease payments. Alright? Now, ulitin ko. Yung 5 na yung class, tatandaan mo yan. Yan yung magiging part of the lease payments. Alright? Lahat yan, binabayaran ni lessee to the lessor. Fixed rentals, variable rentals, purchase option, GRV, and penalties. So, lahat yan from lessee to the lessor. Got it? Okay, now, kaya ko hina-highlight class na lessee to the lessor because yung lease payments, tandaan mo to class, this excludes executory costs. Excludes hindi includes. Bakit sir? Ano ba sir yung executory cost? Examples are, number 1, taxes, mga property taxes. Okay? Ano pa? Insurance. What else? Maintenance. Because yung taxes na yan, so lahat yan si lessee yung babayad. Tama? Yung property taxes na yan, sino babayaran ni lessee? Government. CBIR, babayaran niya dyan. Insurance, sino babayaran dyan ni lessee? Insurance company. Yung maintenance, sino? Well, sino yung nag-render ng maintenance service? Ibig sabihin, class, yung executory cost na yan, yung term natin dyan, hindi yan from lessee to lessor. Ito, from lessee to third parties. Got it? Kaya class, pag may executory cost, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, huwag mo siya isasama sa lease payments because ang naka-receive niyan is not the lessor, but the third parties. Right? So, executory costs, ang accounting treatment for this, they are charged to expense. Expense right away yan. Got it? Now, balik tayo dito sa lease payments. So, we have 5, right? Okay, sabi dyan, we have to get the present value. So, ibig sabihin, class, kukunin mo yung 5 na yan and we get the present value. Okay? So, sa present value, master na yan. Ilang beses na tayo nag-lesson about present value. So, okay na yan. Important dito is, ano yung rate na gagamitin natin? Pag nag-present value kanyang class, yung first na gagamitin mong rate, ang tawag natin is the implicit interest rate. Okay? So, ano yung implicit interest rate? Implicit interest rate, it's just the required return or target return of the lessor. Okay? For example, si lessor gusto niyang kumita ng 10%, okay, dun sa kontrata nyo. Alright? Ang tawag natin dun is the implicit interest rate. Tandaan mo, pag sabing implicit interest rate, yun yung gusto na return ni lessor. Yun yung target return niya. Yun yung target na kitain niya sa kontrata nyo dalawa. Got it? So, ibig sabihin, lessor knows kung ano yung implicit interest rate. Got it? Kasi yun yung target return niya. So, ibig sabihin, class, kaya number 1 yan. Okay, may hierarchy. Kapag given yan, implicit interest rate, yun yung gagamitin mo pang present value, pang discount. Basically, it's the effective rate. Okay? Now, if hindi given yung implicit rate, ang gagawin mo next is what we call incremental borrowing rate. Sir, ano naman yung incremental borrowing rate? So, basically, class, ang ibig sabihin yan, pag si lessee, okay, bumili siya ng similar asset, ano yung i-charge sa kanya ni bank? Okay? Bank rate, if the lessee, okay, buys a similar asset. Bigyan kita ng example. For example, dito, class, ang ginawa ni Mr. X instead, binili niya yung building and then inutang niya sa bangko. Nag-loan siya sa bank to buy this building. Yung interest rate na i-charge sa kanya ni bank is what we call incremental borrowing rate. Kaya yan, may number 1 and number 2 hierarchy yan. Because pag given yung implicit interest rate, yan gagamitin mo. Pag given sila both, implicit interest rate gagamitin mo. Pag hindi given yung implicit interest rate, that's the only time that you use the incremental borrowing rate. Ulitin ko, class, implicit interest rate, yan yung target return ni lessor. Incremental borrowing rate, yan yung i-charge sa'yo ng bank kapag bumili ka ng similar asset. Got it? Alright. So, ibig sabihin, class, okay na tayo dito sa lease liability. I-apply na lang natin later yan as we answer our exercises. Let's go to ROA or right of use asset. Ano yung components of the ROA? Alright. First component yan, class, is the present value of lease payments. Sir, ano yung present value of lease payments? Ito. Okay? Yung lease liability natin. Kaya ako siya inuna, class, yung discussion ng lease liability because yung amount na mako-compute mo dyan, magiging part siya of your right of use asset. Got it? So, lahat yan, i-present value mo, meron ka lease liability. Yung amount na makukuha mo dyan, mag-form part of the right of use asset. Got it? Alright. Now, ang kailangan mo tandaan, class, sa right of use asset, measured siya at cost. Actually, yung concept na i-apply natin dito, yung concept na in-apply natin in accounting for property, plant, and equipment. How do you account for PPE? Initially, mini-measure natin yan at cost. Tama ba? So, pag PPE, lahat ng cost okay, necessary to bring the asset to its intended use, kinakapitalize natin. Ganon din dito sa right of use asset. Okay, I'll show you later why. So, first component is the present value of lease payments. Pwede mong isipin, class, na ito yung acquisition price mo or purchase price of the asset. Okay, yan lahat ng babayaran mo. Tama? So, kasama siya sa right of use asset. Number 2 is what we call the lease bonus. Alright? Pag sinabing lease bonus, class, payment yan from lessee to the lessor. Sir, ano yung example ng lease bonus? Okay, ganito yan. For example, typically, ang policy ni Mr. Y is, okay, ang rent mo lang is, ang lease term lang is usually 5 years. Alright? So, yan lang yung pinapalease ko sa lahat na naging tenants ko before, sabi ni Mr. Y. Okay? Ngayon, si Mr. X gusto niya 10 years para sa school niya. Tama? Now, para maging 10 years yan, willing si Mr. X, si lessee, na bayaran si lessor, okay, para ma-extend to 10 years. At the start of the lease pa lang, babayaran na ni lessee si lessor. So basically, yung lease bonus, class, pwede mo siyang isipin na bayad yan ni lessee to the lessor to get more favorable terms. So in this case, since ang target ni lessee is 10 years, magbabayad siya ng additional kay lessor para makakuha siya ng 10 years. We call it lease bonus. And a lease bonus, addition siya sa right of use asset. Got it? Lease bonus minus lease incentive. Sir, ano naman yung lease incentive? Tandaan mo, if yung lease bonus is payment from lessee to lessor, pag lease incentive, lessor to lessee. Kaya minus siya. Got it? Sir, ano examples of lease incentive? So basically, kasi ang magandang example niyan is yung mga reimbursement. Okay? For example, ang ginawa ni lessor, ni-reimburse niya si lessee para dun sa commission na binayad ni lessee sa, let's say may broker na involved dito. So si broker, siya yung naghanap ng asset, ng building, okay? So binayaran ni lessee yung broker. Ngayon, ni-reimburse ni lessor yung commission na binayad ni lessee kay broker. Example yun of lease incentive. Ano pa? Let's say, sabi ni lessor, sige, 6 months free rent ka. Okay? Huwag ka muna magbayad for the first 6 months, grace period. Example yun of lease incentive. Ano pa? Let's say, free relocation. Siyempre, school yan, di ba? Classroom. Okay? Ngayon, lahat ng cost ni lessee sa pagdala ng mga gamit dun sa building, re-reimburse ni lessor. Example yun of lease incentive. So, tandaan mo lang, class, pag lease bonus, si lessee magbabayad kay lessor. Pag lease incentive, si lessor magbabayad kay lessee. Kaya, lease bonus is added to ROA. Lease incentive is deducted from ROA. Got it? Now, ano pa yung form part of ROA? Okay, lagi niyong mababasa to. You call this initial direct costs. Yung initial direct cost, pwede mo siyang isipin sa PPE as these are directly attributable costs. Okay? Ano example of initial direct cost? Finder's fee. Okay? Ano pa? Broker's fee. Right? Kasi usually, mahirap maghanap ng 3-story building na may 1,000 square meters na floor area. So, sinabi ni Mr. X sa mga brokers niya, sige, hanap kayo. Pag nakakita kayo, and then na-close natin yung deal, babayaran namin kayo ng commission and finder's fee. Yun tawag mo doon. Finder's fee and broker's fee. Initial direct cost yan. Alright? So, yung mga agent's commission, yung mga ganyan. So, yan, mang-i-incur ni lessee yan. Okay? Directly attributable cost, necessary yan para makapag-enter into a lease contract si lessee. Initial direct costs are added to your right of use asset. Okay? And last one is restoration costs. Sir, ano yung restoration costs? So basically, class, in a lease contract, usually, yung building na yan, bare yan, walang laman yan. Siyempre si lessee, kailangan niyang i-transform yan into school. So, gagawa siya ng classroom, maglalagay siya ng walls, mga partitions, and so on and so forth. Ang tawag natin dun, class, is leasehold improvements. If maalala mo yung leasehold improvements, we discussed this during our discussion of property, plant, and equipment. Tama? Dini-depreciate natin yan, if you remember. Now, usually, nasa lease, sa contract of lease na at the end of lease term, 10 years, kailangan ang gawin ni lessee, kailangan niya i-remove yan, mga leasehold improvements, okay, and i-restore, ibabalik niya sa dating itsura yung building. We call it restoration cost. Pero kailangan class, nasa kontrata to, should be under the written dapat in the contract of lease. Okay? Ibig sabihin, required ka si lessee na i-restore yung property. Pag wala nakalagay, hindi siya magiging part of your right of use asset. Okay, let's recap. Yung right of use asset, may 4 na components yan. Present value of lease payments, ito yun, na-discuss natin. Lagay mo lang dyan. Lease bonus minus lease incentive, initial direct costs, and restoration costs. So class, pwede mo bang isipin na yung ROA mo, parang mas mataas siya than your lease liability. Tama, kasi yung ROA, isang component niya is yung amount ng lease liability. So meron ka pang 3 other components, ibig sabihin, our right of use asset is greater than our lease liability. Got it? Okay, so balik tayo sa illustration natin. Ulitin ko, at the start, initial measurement is we debit right of use asset. Okay na tayo dyan. We credit lease liability. Ito siya. Got it? Now, yun yung initial measurement. Sa subsequent measurement, every December 31, okay, ang usual na model na ginagamit dito is the cost model. Alam natin sa PPE, pag sinabi mong cost model, it's cost less accumulated depreciation, less accumulated impairment, you have the carrying amount. Tama? Ano yung cost na yan? Iyon yung right of use asset natin. Ito siya, kaya sinabi ko dyan at cost. Okay? So yung cost na yan, basically, yan yung initial measurement natin ng ROA. Accumulated depreciation, alam nyo na yan, and accumulated impairment, na-discuss na natin yan in Intermediate Accounting 1 extensively. Ngayon, mag-focus tayo sa depreciation. Alright? So sa depreciation class, actually, ang issue lang dito is, ano yung useful life na gagamitin mo? Okay? Is it yung lease term? Ano yung lease term natin? 10 years. Okay? Or yung useful life ng building. Let's say yung building, yung buhay niya is 25 years pa. So lease term is 10 years. Yun yung nasa contract of lease. And 25 years yung useful life. Ano gagamitin natin dyan? Depende sa scenario. Okay? First scenario natin is no transfer of ownership. No transfer of ownership. Okay? Second scenario natin, with transfer of ownership. Third scenario natin is merong purchase option. And fourth scenario natin is may GRV. Okay? So, ganito lang class yan. Madali lang yan. Ganito lang iisipin mo. How long, sa point of view ni lessee, hindi i-discuss natin, how long do we use the asset? Gano'n ba katagal natin i-occupy yung asset na yan? Okay, punta tayo sa first scenario. No transfer of ownership. Actually, ito yung normal. Okay, sa lease contract, kapag tapos ng 10 years, yung asset, babalik na yan kay lessor. Okay, hindi yan matatransfer kay lessee. So, ito yung normal na nangyayari in practice. No transfer of ownership. Okay, pag walang transfer of ownership, hanggang kailan mo gagamitin yung asset? 10 years. Ibig sabihin, pag nag-depreciate ka, ang gagamitin mong denominator as useful life is the lease term. Does that make sense? Now, if with transfer of ownership, okay, dapat pag may transfer of ownership, nakasulat yun. Explicit yun sa kontrata nyo, sa contract of lease, na at the end of 10 years, yung asset mapupunta na kay lessee. Dapat nakasulat yan, ha? In that case, since mapupunta na sa iyo yung asset, therefore, gagamitin mo siya for 25 years. So, ang gagamitin mo pang depreciate is the useful life of 25 years. Next scenario, purchase option. If you remember, ang ibig sabihin ng purchase option, yung leased asset, pwedeng bilhin ni lessee, therefore mapupunta sa kanya yung asset. Leased asset will go to the lessee. So, mapupunta sa iyo yung leased asset, ibig sabihin, magagamit mo siya for 25 years. Last scenario natin is GRV. Okay? Pag sinabi mong guaranteed residual value, for sure, yung asset babalik yan sa lessor. Okay? Kaya mo siya gina-guarantee. Kung babalik siya sa lessor, after 10 years, hindi mo na magagamit yung asset. That's why if may GRB, depreciation is over 10 years or the lease term. Got it? Okay. So again, Pag may transfer of ownership, well, 25 years. Pag no transfer of ownership, lease term lang, 10 years. So class, ito yung kailangan mong tandaan. Lahat na to, ito lang yung kailangan mong tandaan sa point of view ni lessee. So we will answer exercises. Magre-refer back tayo lagi dito para ma-connect natin yan dun sa yung lesson natin dun sa exercises. Alright? But ito lang yung kailangan mong malaman dyan. Sige, so let's answer a couple of exercises for this topic. Okay, let's go to our exercises. For today class, ang objective natin is to discuss lahat ng possible scenarios na pwede mo ma-encounter in accounting for lease from the perspective of the lessee. Let's start with problem number 1. For this one is lease without transfer of title. So very basic. Okay, let's go to the requirements. Requirement number 1, prepare the journal entries, the books of Company X for 2023 and 2024. And number 2 is prepare journal entry upon expiration of the lease on January 1, 2028. Okay, on January 1, 2023, Company X entered into a lease for a new warehouse. Lease payments are 800,000 a year for 5 years. So yung 5 years na yan, ang tawag natin dyan is the lease term. Payable in advance starting January 1, 2023. So kasi pag sabi mong payable in advance, it means yung payment is kung kailan yung start of the contract. So nag-start yung contract January 1, 2023 and the first payment is the same day, January 1, 2023. The warehouse has an estimated life of 10 years. So this is the useful life. And the entity paid initial direct cost of 100,000 on January 1, 2023. The realty taxes or property taxes, 40,000 a year are to be paid by the entity. Plus, ang tawag natin sa mga property taxes na yan, these are executory costs. The lease provides for neither transfer of title to the lessee upon expiration nor a purchase option. Kaya yung title natin dyan is without transfer, okay, of title. The underlying asset is reverted to the lessor at the expiration of the lease term. Ito naman yung typical na scenario kapag lease. Yung asset babalik siya kay lessor at the end of the lease term. The interest rate implicit in the lease is 10%. So we know, gagamitin natin yung implicit interest rate to discount the lease payments. The relevant value factors are, ayan, so meron tayong two choices. Present value of ordinary annuity of 1 at 10% for 5 periods, or present value of annuity in advance at 10% for 5 periods. Okay, so now, what is the difference of ordinary annuity and annuity in advance? So in our case, pag annuity in advance, yung first payment mo is the start of the contract, January 1, 2023. Pag sinabing ordinary annuity, yung first payment mo class is 1 year from now, or usually December 31, 2023. Since January 1, 2023 yung first payment, so we know gagamitin natin is annuity in advance, 4.17 as our present value factor. Right? So may mga problems tayo na hindi given yung PV factor, so tayo magko-compute. So alam nyo na, master yun yan kasi maraming topics na natin discuss yung pag-compute ng present value. Alright? So first thing we have to do kapag lease is to compute for the lease liability. And lease liability is just the present value of the lease payments. Tama? So ito yung lease payments natin. Right? And for problem number 1, yung relevant sa atin is yung 800,000 a year. Okay, so multiply natin yung 800,000 a year by the present value factor. So get your calculator, sabayan nyo ako mag-compute. So 800,000 times 4.17. Our lease liability is 33,36,000. Our lease liability. Okay, so now, let's prepare the journal entries. Yung first entry natin is this one. January 1, 2023, meron tayong debit right of use asset or ROA, credit lease liability, 3336,000. Okay, so what else? Ano pa nangyari? These payments are 800,000 a year, payable in advance. Okay, and the warehouse has an estimated life of 10 years. The entity paid initial direct cost. So class, ano yung effect ng initial direct cost? From our lecture, initial direct cost, may effect siya sa ROA natin. Pero wala siyang effect sa lease liability. Wala siya dito. Tama ba? Okay. Ibig sabihin class, yung entry natin for that 100,000 is debit ROA, credit cash, 100,000. Okay? Therefore, yung carrying amount of our ROA, compute natin, carrying amount niya, is 3,346,000 plus 100,000. That's 3,436,000. Okay, so ano pa nangyari, sir? Well, yung first na 800,000, yung first lease payment mo, binayaran mo same day, January 1, 2023. So, ang entry natin dyan is debit lease liability, credit cash, 800,000. Alright? Now, since yung requirement sa atin is to prepare the entries for 2023 and 2024, 2 years, ang gagawin mo, class, kapag lease yung topic is we have to create an amortization table. Master na master mo na yung amortization table kasi madami na tayong topics na ginamit natin yun. So, intermediate accounting 1, sa notes payable, sa bonds payable, lagi tayong gumagamit ng amortization table. So, same concept yung i-apply natin for leases. Okay? So, gawa tayo dito. We have date, we have the payments, interest expense, we have the amortization, and the carrying amount. Alright, so yung first date natin is January 1, 2023. Since yung first payment is the same day, dalawa yung lalagay kong January 1, 2023. Okay? Now, since 5 years yan, 2028 yung expiration of the lease or lease term. January 1, 2024, January 1, 2026, January 1, 2027. So, ilan na yan? 2025 muna pa. 5, 6, January 1, 2027. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 payments of 800,000. So, lagay natin yan. 800,000. 800,000 here. 100,000. 800 and 800. So, lahat yan lalagay mo yan sa payments column. Okay? And then, yung carrying amount at the start, yun na-compute natin na lease liability, 3,336,000. So, how much yung interest expense natin? Interest expense is based on the implicit interest rate, 10%. So, lagay mo na dito para hindi mo makalimutan. Right? So, apply lang natin, class, yung tinuro sa nyo about amortization table. Get your calculators. Gagawin natin is yung 3,336,000. Okay, M plus mo yan. Okay? And then take note, class, nagbayad ka ng first 800,000 same day. Wala ka pang interest expense kasi same day yan. Therefore, amortization mo is 800,000. Amortization is just the difference between your payment and the interest expense. Okay, 800,000, M minus mo naman to. Ibig sabihin, from 3,336,000, magma-minus tayo ng 800,000. Makukuha natin dyan, class, is 2,536,000. Okay? Multiply natin by 10% to get the interest expense, 253,600. We deduct 800,000 na payment. Ito yung amortization natin, 546,400. M plus mo siya. Your carrying amount is 1,989,600 times 10%, 198,960 minus 800,000, 601,040. M plus, recall memory, 1,388,560 times 10%, 138,856. Okay, minus 800,000. You get 661,144. M plus, 727,416. Now, since ito na yung last year, may mga konting rounding off differences tayo. So, dapat maging 0 na siya sa last year. If this is 0, yung amortization mo should be equal here. 727,416. Alright? So, minus 800,000 to be exact. Interest expense mo at the end of the lease term is 72,584. Okay, so master na master mo na yung paggawa ng amortization table. Same concept lang yung ginamit natin for leases. Once may amortization table ka na, madali na tayo mag-journal entry. Now, let's go to December 31, 2023. Tingin ka lang dito sa amortization table sa third row natin. Take note, class, yung date dito is January 1, 2024. Alright? Now, so yung interest na yan, interest expense, hindi pa yan paid. Okay? Because babayaran mo siya next day pa. So, it means, as of December 31, 2023, okay, entry natin dyan is debit interest expense, credit interest payable, hindi pa cash. Right? Pag every December 31 yung bayaran, cash yung i-credit mo. But this one, Next day pa yan. Okay? Tomorrow pa. 253,600. Okay? Now, yung 546,400 or yung lease liability mo, yung debit lease liability, hindi mo pa yan lalagyan ng entry as of December 31. January 1 ka pa mag-e-entry for this one. Okay? Because January 1 pa siya babayaran. Alright? So, ano pa nangyari, class, sa problem? Meron tayong executory cost, realty taxes na 40,000. And from our lecture, alam natin, class, lahat ng executory costs, hindi yan kasama sa lease payments. Okay? Excludes executory cost. Because third party yung makaka-receive niyan. Yung taxes, in particular, CBIR yung makaka-receive niyan, yung government. Lahat ng executory cost, diretso expense yan. How much? 40,000. So, entry natin dyan is debit taxes expense, credit cash, 40,000. Alright? And don't forget, class, every December 31, since meron tayong asset, we have to depreciate. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation, how much? Okay. So, sabi dito, class, wala daw transfer of title and walang purchase option. So, ano yung useful life na gagamitin natin as denominator? So, pag walang transfer of title, okay, no transfer of ownership, and then wala ka rin namang purchase option, so ibig sabihin, class, after the lease term, in this case, 5 years, mapupunta na kay lessor yung property. Therefore, magagamit mo lang siya for 5 years. Tama lang? So, it means yung depreciation natin, since ito yung carrying amount natin at the start, 3,436,000, di-divide ko siya by 5 years. Hindi 10 years because babalik kay lessor yung property. Divide by 5, you get here 687,200. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation, 687,200. Alright? Now, we're asked to journalize also 2024. Tama? This is December 31, 2023. Next day, January 1, 2024, babayaran mo na yung interest payable na yan. Debit interest payable, credit cash, 253,600. Kaya very important, class, kung kailan yung binabayaran yung lease payments. Kasi every January 1 binabayaran. Pag December 31, mas madali kasi diretso cash na yung interest expense natin dito. Alright. So, ibig sabihin, class, yung 546,400 na amortization, pag sinabing amortization, ito yung maka-affect sa lease liability natin. Meron tayong entry dyan. January 1, 2024, debit lease liability, credit cash, 546,400. So, how much yung total cash out natin dito? 253,600 plus 546,400, 800,000. Tama lang? Yun yung lease payment natin. Ibig sabihin, class, yung 800,000 na yan, divided into 2 yan. May portion dyan na napupunta sa interest expense, may portion dyan na napupunta sa principal or lease liability. Okay? We call it amortization. Alright. So, ano pa nangyari, class? Let's go to December 31, 2024. December 31, 2024, titingin ka lang sa amortization table natin. Kaya, ang suggestion ko sa inyo, gawa ka lang ng table. Mas madaling mag-journalize kapag meron ka nito. Alright, so mag-accrue tayo, 198,960 na interest expense, debit interest expense, credit interest payable, 198,960. Alright, so wala ka pang entry for this one. Next day pa yan, January 1, 2025. And then magbayad ulit tayo ng executory cost kasi every year daw siya. Debit taxes expense, credit cash, 40,000. And since this is the end of the year, don't forget to depreciate. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation. So, na-compute natin earlier, 687,200. Okay. So, these are your journal entries for 2023 and 2024. Let's go to requirement number 2. Prepare the journal entry upon expiration of the lease. Okay. So, yung last payment natin, class, is happened noong January 1, 2027. Tama kasi every beginning of the year yung bayaran. 5 times siya nagbayad ng 800,000. Now, yung expiration ng lease is actually January 1, 2028. So, ano mangyayari, sir, sa January 1, 2028? On January 1, 2028, yung mangyayari dyan, class, ibabalik mo na yung asset to the lessor. So, ibig sabihin, lahat ng related to the leased asset, tatanggalin mo na. Okay? So, ang gagawin ko dyan, class, I'll debit accumulated depreciation, credit right-of-use asset, since as of this point, fully depreciated na yan. Nakapag-depreciate na ako for 5 years. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, class, yung accumulated depreciation mo will be equal to your cost, 3436,000. Yan lang yung entry mo at the end of lease term. Babalik mo lang yung asset to the lessor. Got it? Alright. So, yan. Problem number 1, very basic. Okay, basic lang yan. So, ang gagawin natin, class, papahirap yung problems na isusolve natin. Okay, so lahat ng possible scenarios. Let's go to problem number 2. This time naman, class, with transfer of title naman. So, if you recall, problem number 1, without transfer of title yan. Okay, let's take a look at the requirement. Prepare the journal entries on the books of Company X for 2023 and 2024 in connection with the finance lease. Okay. On January 1, 2023, Company X closed a lease contract for newly constructed terminals and freight storage facilities. Although the terminals have a composite life of 10 years, so ito yung useful life, the lease runs for 5 years. Ito yung lease term natin. Right? With the transfer of title to the lessee upon expiration of the lease. So take note, magkakaroon lang ng transfer of title to the lessee kapag nakasulat yun sa contract of lease. Otherwise, babalik kay lessor yung asset. Annual lease payment is 1 million payable at the end of each year starting December 31, 2023. So ito yung isa pang difference nila. So yung problem number 1 natin, January 1 yung start, January 1 ka din nagbayad. This one, December 31 pa. Okay? The lessee must also make an annual payment of 75,000 for taxes, 125,000 for insurance. Ano tawag natin dyan, class? These are executory costs. And executory costs are expensed outright. Okay? The lessee incurred initial direct cost of 150,000. So we know, capitalizable to right-of-use asset yan, including 50,000 commission paid to the broker that arranged the lease. As an incentive to the lessee lessor agreed to reimburse the lessee for the commission of 50,000. Right? So ito, ni-reimburse daw yan ni lessor. Tapos ano nga ba yung treatment if there's a reimbursement? So pag may reimbursement ni lessor, okay, if you recall, ang tawag natin doon is lease incentive. Pag lessor to lessee, reimbursement, ibabawas natin siya, suminus siya sa right-of-use asset natin. Okay? The contract was negotiated to assure the lessor a 10% rate of return. So ito yung required return ni lessor, ang tawag natin dyan, implicit interest rate. The present value of an ordinary annuity is 3.79. The present value of an annuity of 1 in advance is 4.17. So class, ano pipiliin mo? Yung ordinary annuity na 3.79 or annuity in advance na 4.17. Titingnan mo kung kailan yung first payment. Since the first payment will happen 1 year from now, so January 1, first payment is December 31, ang gagamitin mo dyan is ordinary annuity, which is 3.79. If the payment happens on January 1, 2023, pag same day, ang tawag natin doon in advance, 4.17 gagamitin mo. So for now, 3.79 tayo. Okay? Now, so let's see. Computing muna natin, class, yung present value of lease payments or our lease liability. So, ang lease payment is 1 million. Tama? So, 1 million times 3.79. Okay? So, 1 million times 3.79. I get here 3,790,000. So, this is my lease liability. Alright? Now, tingnan natin. Journal entry number for January 1, 2023 is debit right-of-use asset, credit lease liability, 3,790,000. Okay, ano pa nangyari, class, during the year? Okay, mamaya na yung taxes and insurance. The lessee incurred initial direct cost of 150,000. So alam natin, entry for initial direct cost is debit ROA, credit cash, 150,000. Including 50,000 commission. As an incentive, the lessor agreed to reimburse the lessee. So lease incentive yan, babawas natin yan sa ROA. So entry mo lang dyan is debit cash, credit ROA, 50,000. Alright? Sige nga, compute nga natin class yung carrying amount of our right of use asset after everything. So 3,790,000 plus 150. Okay, minus 50,000. Answer is 3,890,000. Ito yung carrying amount natin. So gagamitin natin to later to compute for our depreciation. So class, take note, yung initial direct cost and yung lease incentive, wala siyang effect sa lease liability natin. Sa row, walang siya may effect. Tama? Alright. So we're asked to journalize both 2023 and 2024. So tingnan natin class. Gagawin ko dyan is, again, I'll create an amortization table. So meron kang date, payment, interest expense, amortization, and carrying amount. Since ang tinatanong lang sa atin is 2023 and 2024, hindi ko nakukompletuhin yung amortization table ng 5 years. 2 years lang. Okay, so January 1, 2023, December 31, 2023, and December 31, 2024. Right? Carrying amount natin, we computed, it's 3,790,000. Yung payment column natin class, that's 1 million per year. So 1 million here, 1 million here. Interest expense natin, we'll use our implicit interest rate, which is 10%. Okay, so 10% gagamitin natin. So gawin natin class is, so get your calculators, 3,790,000 M plus, multiply by 10%. Okay, so we have 379,000 here, minus minus 1 million na payment, 621,000 M plus. Okay, I get here 3,169,000. Multiply by 10%, 316,900 minus 1 million, 683,100, M plus 2,485,900. Alright? So after our amortization table, madali na yung entries natin. So we're done with January 1. Tama? Let's go to December 31, 2023. December 31, 2023. Tingin lang ako sa amortization table. So, interest expense, debit interest expense. This time, ang bayaran natin is every December 31. So, instead of interest payable, diretso cash na tayo dyan. Debit interest expense, credit cash, 379,000. Right? Yung principal naman natin or amortization natin, debit lease liability, credit cash, 621,000. Alright? So, unlike dun sa first problem natin class, payable muna to. Tapos, wala pa tayong entry sa lease liability because tomorrow pa bayaran. If every December 31 yung bayaran, it's different. So, mas madali siya. Got it? Because January 1, wala tayong entry. Okay, so ano pa yung ibang nangyari class? May executory cost tayo na 75,000 for taxes, 125,000 for insurance. Debit taxes expense, 75,000. Debit insurance expense, 125,000. So 75 plus 25, that's 200,000. Credit cash, 200,000. Right? And don't forget the depreciation, debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation. Now, paano natin kukomputin yan? Take note, yung carrying amount na natin is 3,890,000. Yung question na lang dito, classes, ano gagamitin mo useful life to compute for the depreciation? Is it 10 years or is it 5 years? Nakalagay sa problem, meron tayong transfer of title. Ibig sabihin, kung mapupunta sa iyo yung asset na yan, magagamit mo yung asset for 10 years. Does that make sense? Okay. So it means yung 3,890,000, divide natin sa 10, our depreciation is 389,000. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation, 389,000. Okay? So let's go to year 2024. Tingin ka lang sa amortization table natin. 12/31, 2024. Start muna tayo with interest expense, debit interest expense, credit cash, 316,900. Amortization natin, debit lease liability, credit cash, 683,100. Again, yung total cash na yan, pag inad natin yan, 316,900 plus 683,100, you have 1 million. So, ang objective natin for amortization table is to know out of 1 million, how much dun yung interest expense, how much dun yung amortization of our lease liability. Kaya hinihiwalay ko yung journal entry. Alright? So what else? What happens pa noong December 31? Take note every year yung taxes and insurance na yan. So we debit taxes expense, okay, 75,000. Debit insurance expense, 125,000. And credit cash, 200,000. Alright? Don't forget your depreciation. Debit depreciation expense. Credit accumulated depreciation, 389,000. Okay? So basically, for problem number 2, we learned na kapag may transfer of title, we use 10 years for depreciation or yung useful life of the asset. And nalaman din natin kung paano yung journal entries kapag every December 31 yung bayaran. Okay? Unlike yung problem 1, January 1, mas mahirap kasi sa January 1, meron ka pang additional journal entry. If every December 31, wala na. Alright? So, yan. This is how you do pag lease is with transfer of title. Let's go to problem number 3. What if meron kang purchase option? So what do you mean, sir, by purchase option? Yan yung right ni lessee na bilhin yung asset. Tama? And we learned from our lecture, yung purchase option will be part of your lease liability if reasonably certain yan. Okay? Na i-exercise ni lessee. Dapat explicit sa problem na reasonably certain. Okay, prepare the journal entries, the books of Company X for 2023 and 2024. On January 1, 2023, Company X leased a machine with the following provisions. Annual lease payment in advance at the beginning of each year. Ingat ka lagi doon, beginning or every December 31. Kasi depende doon yung magiging PV factor natin. So beginning siya in advance, 1 million. Lease term is 10 years, useful life is 15 years. Implicit interest rate is 12%. Present value of ordinary annuity or present value in advance. Ano pipiliin natin dyan, class? Since beginning of each year yung bayaran, we know in advance yung pipiliin mo dyan. Okay? Present value of 1 at 12% for 10 periods, 0.322. So, tingnan natin. Now, the entity has an option to purchase the machine on January 1, 2033. So, after 10 years, since yung 2023, 2033. So, after lease term. Pwede niyang bilhin for 200,000. At the commencement date, it is reasonably certain that the purchase option will be exercised. Okay. Now, first step natin dito, class, is to compute for our lease liability. Okay, since 1 million yung payment, annual lease payment, multiply natin sa annuity. Kasi pag sinabi mo annuity, series of payments yun. Tama? So, 1 million, multiply natin dito sa 6.328. 1 million times 6.328, you get 6,328,000. And then, yung purchase option, okay, dapat, class, kasama yan sa present value of lease payment. So, kukunin natin yung present value niyan. Lease payment siya, di ba? Component siya niyan, no? So, how do you compute for the present value of purchase option? Take note na yung 1 million every year binabayaran. Kaya annuity yung ginamit nating PV factor. Yung purchase option, once lang yan. Okay? After 10 years. So, ang gagamitin mo dyan is present value of 1. Pag isang bayaran lang, present value of 1 gagamitin mo. Alright? Multiply natin by 200,000. So, later, meron tayong mga exercises para tayo naman yung co-compute ng PV factors. So far kasi given siya sa problem. 200,000 times 0.322, 64,400. So, add nga natin yan. Plus 6,328,000. You get 6,392,400. 6,392,400, that's our lease liability. Alright. So, let's see. Tingnan natin, class, ha? Journal entry natin for 2023 and 2024. Let's start with January 1, 2023. Okay. So, na-compute natin na lease liability is 6,392,400. Debit ROA, credit lease liability, 6,392,400. Okay? And, ano nangyari pa? So, in advance daw, binayaran yung 1 million. So, January 1, meron kang debit lease liability, credit cash, 1 million. Alright? Since 2 years yung pinapa-journalize natin, gawa tayo ng amortization table. We have the date, we have the payment, interest expense, amortization, and our carrying amount. First date is January 1, 2023. Since in advance yung payment, dalawang January 1, 2023 yung lalagay ko dyan. Okay, we have December 31, 2023 and December 31, 2024. Hindi ko kumpletuhin yung amortization table kasi class, 10 years yan, so matagal yan. Hanggang kung ano lang yung requirements sa atin, 2024. Alright, so lagay ko dito class, 6392,400. 6392,400. First payment of 1 million happened on same day. Okay, amortization natin is 1 million. 6392,400 minus 1 million is 5392,400. Alright, so lagay natin yung implicit rate natin dito, interest expense, 12%. Okay, let's complete the amortization table. Don't forget na i-clear yung memory para hindi ka magkamali. Lagay ko dito 5392,400 and plus, I'll multiply this by 12%. So again, may mga 1 million ka dyan every year. Okay, so 5392,400 times 12% ulit. So 5392,400 and plus times 12%, 647,088 minus 1 million, 352,912 and plus 50,39,488, right? Times 12%, 604,739 minus 1 million, 395,261 and plus 464,4227. Okay. Let's continue the journal entries. Punta tayo sa December 31, 2023. December 31, 2023, we have, take note, every January 1 yung bayaran. So, ang gagawin ko dyan, class, this one is still an interest payable. Tama ba? Okay, so actually, dapat January 1, 2024 yan. Ito, January 1, 2025. So, okay lang. Mag-adjust lang tayo sa journal entry natin. Debit interest expense, credit interest payable, 647, okay, 088. Right? For this one, next day pa natin yan babayaran. Huwag mo lang yan. Okay? What else? Let's compute for depreciation. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation. So, yung row 1 natin is 639,400. So, class, since may purchase option ka, ano gagamitin mong useful life to compute for the depreciation? 10 years or 15 years? Ang gagamitin mo dyan is 15 years. Bakit? Kasi mapupunta sa iyo yung asset. Tama? So, kaya mo siya magamit sa buong life niya. Right? So, 639,400 divided by 15 years, I get here 426,160. 426,160. Okay? Next. January 1, 2024. Okay, next day. Bayaran na natin yung interest payable na yan. Debit interest payable, credit cash, 647,088. Tama? And then, pwede na natin bayaran yung amortization, lease liability component, debit lease liability, credit cash, 352,912. Alright? Lagay ko dito. Now, let's go to December 31, 2024. Mag-accrue tayo ng interest, debit interest expense, credit interest payable, 604,739. Okay? And then, ito tomorrow pa yan. So, next entry natin is debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation, 426,160. Alright? So, ayan. So, that's how you do kapag may purchase option. Sama mo yung purchase option sa present value to get the lease liability. Okay? Ang isa pa niyang effect is the depreciation. Since reasonably certain, yung pag-exercise ng purchase option, you use the useful life 15 years to compute for the depreciation. Okay? Okay, let's go to problem number 9. Purchase of leased asset. Requirement, prepare journal entry to record the actual purchase. Paano class kung binili mo talaga yung asset? Okay, in-exercise mo yung purchase option mo. Tama? What is your entry. Company X leased many assets and capitalized most of the leased assets. On December 31, 2023, the entity had the following balances in relation to an equipment. So right-of-use asset is 4 million. Accumulated depreciation is 2,465. Lease liability is 1.3 million. Depreciation has been recorded up to end of the year. So updated na yung depreciation natin. No accrued interest is involved. On December 31, 2023, the entity decided to purchase for 1.6 million and paid cash to complete the purchase. So, yan na yung pag-exercise mo ng purchase option. So, what is your journal entry? December 31, 2023, tandaan mo class, since binibili mo na yung asset, hindi lang right yung nasa iyo. Yung mismong asset, ikaw na yung owner nun. Okay? Therefore, since anong klaseng asset pa yan? Equipment. Debit equipment. Okay? And then, mamaya na natin computein yan, i-recognize na natin lahat ng related sa lease. Lease liability or accumulated depreciation, debit. Tanggalin natin lahat, 2,465,000. Lease liability is, well, debit natin yan to recognize, 1.3 million. Yung row 1 natin, right of use asset, 4 million, credit natin yan. And then, nagbayad tayo ng cash, 1.6 million. We also have credit cash, 1.6 million. Tignan natin yung balancing figure. Credit natin is 4 million plus 1.6 minus 2,465 minus 1.3. Debit, equipment, 1,835,000. Yan yung entry mo. So, take note class, equipment na yan. Hindi na right of use asset yan. Because ikaw na talaga yung may-ari of the equipment. Now, yung 1,835,000, pwede mo rin siyang isipin as, tama ba class, ano yung carrying amount of our ROA dun based sa given? 4 million minus 2,465,000, 1,535. Tama ba? Carrying amount is 1,535. And then, out of 1,535, meron kang liability na 1.3. So, how much yung difference yan? 235,000. Tama? Ito yung net, parang net asset mo. Kasi may minus sa liability. So, ibig sabihin class, yung equipment natin na yan, para lang siyang yung concept natin sa PPE. Pag bumili ka, paano mo i-measure PPE at cost? So, how much yung binayad mo? Well, ang binayad mo talaga dyan is yung cash na 1.6 million and yung net assets na 235,000. Kaya nakuha mo dyan is 1,835,000. So, pwedeng ganito yung computation or para sure ka, i-journalize mo. De-recognize mo lahat. Okay? Credit mo yung cash na binayad mo. Balancing figure is your equipment. Okay? So, that's how you do kapag purchase of leased asset. Okay. Let's go to the next problem. Problem number 13. Okay. Problem number 13. First question is, what is the cost of right of use asset or ROA? What is the interest expense? What is the lease liability at year end? And what is the depreciation? At the beginning of the current year, Company X leased an equipment from lessor with the following information. Annual rent payable at the end of each year, 500,000. Lease term 8 years. Useful life 10 years. Implicit rate 10%. Ordinary annuity and present value of 1. The entity has the option to purchase the equipment by paying 500,000. It's the purchase option. Sabi dyan, reasonably certain daw that the entity shall exercise the option. The entity incurred initial direct cost of 200,000. Okay, what is the cost? What is the initial cost of the right of use asset? Compute mo natin yung lease liability. 500,000 times 5.33. You have 2,665,000. And then, we have purchase option na 500,000. Multiply natin sa present value of 1 because isang payment lang naman yan. 500,000 times 0.47, 235,000. Let's add the 2 plus 2,665, 2.9 million. Alright, yan yung lease liability natin. Now, ang tanong is ROA. Tama? Ano yung mga sasama pupunta dyan? Lease liability, 2.9 million. What else? Meron tayong initial direct cost of 200,000. Therefore, yung ROA natin is 3.1 million. Letter B. What is the interest expense for the year? Yung lease liability natin is 2.9 million. Take note class hindi naman beginning of the year yung unang bayad. Therefore, hindi ka muna mag-minus ng 500. Therefore, yung 2.9 million, idiretso multiply mo na implicit rate of 10%. Answer for the interest expenses, 290,000, letter A. What is the lease liability at year end? Since ang payment mo is 500,000 per year, tama? And 290,000 doon, interest expense. Therefore, yung lease liability natin is, so 500,000 minus 290, 210,000. And our lease liability na beginning of the year is 2.9 million minus 210,000. Lease liability end of the year is 2.9 minus 2.210, 2,690,000. End of the year, 2,690,000. That's letter A. What is the depreciation for current year? Yung row 1 natin, yung sagot natin sa question 1 is 3.1 million. And merong purchase option. So, mapupunta kay lessee. Therefore, ang gagamitin mo dyan is 10 years. 3.1 million divided by 10. We have 310,000, letter A. Okay, last problem for this topic. Problem number 18. What is the initial lease liability? What is the right of use asset? Annual depreciation and interest expense. At the beginning of current year, Company X leased a building with the following information. Annual fixed payment in advance. Sa beginning of the year, 1 million. Initial direct cost. So, initial direct cost plus yan sa ROA. Tama? Lease incentive received. Since ikaw yung naka-receive, tama? Lease incentive, si lessor to lessee minus sa ROA yan. Lease bonus, add sa ROA. Okay? So, lease incentive minus ROA. Lease bonus paid to lessor plus sa ROA yan. Tama? Discounted amount of restoring the building as required by contract. Restoration cost. Kasama sa ROA. So, add natin at present value. Discounted amount na. So, naka-present value na siya. Purchase option that is not reasonably certain. Pag not reasonably certain, huwag may sasama sa lease liability yan. Dapat reasonably certain. Lease term 5 years. Useful life is 8 years. Okay, implicit rate is 8%. Annuity in advance, 4.31. Multiply natin sa 1 million. Okay, so 4,310,000. And then present value of 1.68. Okay, what is the initial lease liability? Well, ito na, 4,310,000. B. Huwag mo isasama yung purchase option kasi not reasonably certain. Sabi ko dito, dapat reasonably certain siya before you put under lease payments. What is the cost of right of use asset? So, yung ROA, ano class yung mga components yan? Well, kasama dyan yung lease liability na 4,310. Kasama dyan yung initial direct cost of 350,000. We deduct yung lease incentive. How much? 150,000. We add lease bonus of 100,000 plus yan. Okay, and then restoration cost kasama din 200,000 at present value. Since discounted amount, ibig sabihin naka-present value na yan. Let's add 4,310,000 plus 350 minus 150 plus 100 plus 200. Answer here is 4,810,000. This is our ROA. 4,810,000. This is letter B. What is the annual depreciation? So yung ROA natin is 4,810,000. Hindi naman reasonably certain yung purchase option. Therefore, lease term lang yung gagamitin mo dyan. Divide natin by 5. 4,810,000 divided by 5. 962,000. 962,000. That is letter C. And what is the interest expense for the current year? Yung lease liability natin, beginning of the year, is 4,310,000. Tama? Huwag mong kalimutan na yung first payment natin is beginning of the year. Same day, 1 million. Right? Therefore, lease liability mo is 3,310,000. And then, yung implicit rate natin is 8%. Multiply mo by 8%. 3,310,000 times 0.08. That is 264,800 interest expense. Letter C. Let's finish accounting from the point of view of the lessee by answering our theory questions. Under IFRS 16, a lessee is required to recognize. So, finance lease, tama? Yung finance lease, Recognize right of use asset and lease liability, letter A. Number 2, the lessee may apply the operating lease model under what condition? Dalawa. Yung exception natin. Short-term lease, yes. Low-value lease, yes. Both short-term and low-value under all circumstances. Best answer is letter C. The cost of right of use asset comprises all except present value of lease payments. Yes, yung lease liability, kasama yan. Lease payments made to lessor on or before commencement date. Yes, yun yung mga lease bonus. Initial direct cost, yes, kasama din. Estimated cost of dismantling, removing, restoring, for which the lessee has no present obligation. Mali yan. Dapat meron kang present obligation. Nakalagay dapat sa contract na meron kang restoration cost, may liability ka. Okay? A lease liability is measured at absolute amount, hindi. Present value of lease payments, that's correct. Present value of fixed lease payments, fair value, hindi. Which is not part of the lease payments. Rental payments, syempre kasama yan. Residual value guaranteed, GRV, yes. Any payment the lessee must make to purchase the underlying asset under purchase option, reasonably certain, yes. Lessee's obligation to pay executory cost, mali, expense yan. Letter D. What is the interest rate used when the implicit rate cannot be determined? So number 1 is implicit interest rate. Number 2 is incremental borrowing rate. Number 7, what is the treatment to initial direct cost incurred by the lessee? So initial direct cost, tataas yung right of use asset mo pero yung lease liability hindi affected. Added to the carrying amount of the right of use asset, letter B. Which of the following statements concerning residual value guarantees is appropriate for the lessee or the GRV? A, the asset and related liability should be increased by absolute amount. Mali. Asset and liability should be decreased by absolute amount. Asset and liability should be decreased by present value. Okay sana, kaya lang decreased. Asset and liability should be increased by the present value. That's correct. Letter D. Alright, so that concludes our discussion on lease from the perspective of the lessee.